Okay guys, so in this one we are going to actually save the searches, so the locations for those searches. But before we do that, we actually can't save all their data. Their user agreements for their API typically prevent us from saving every part of the data. So that's okay, because we will save the ID of the data we need to save. And I'll kind of show you what we do here by opening up functions.py. Let's just copy this locations here and put it on a new line and then do a new name for ID. So this is getting the ID of the specific place. So if we go back into Chrome and do a refresh for your place, you'll see that it has these ID numbers. So that ID is associated to Minute King, and we can use this to get all the information we need to get. So in the console of Loku, if we go back in here, we can actually see the venue by searching the details, by just pasting it here and hitting the send request. This is getting all that information from their server and returning it to us. It's similar to like using our own server to get the information, but instead it's using their server to get the information, and it's going based off of the ID. This is kind of important because when we want to actually pull data from some of these places, we're not going to store each individual piece here because we don't really need to. Our service doesn't need to do that because there's many of other services that do it already for you. The important part is our users, what they're going to like and what they're not going to like, and how it's going to kind of locate things locally based off of those type of criteria. So let's just store this data, and what we're going to do is we're going to go into our models for the locations, and we're going to go to models here, and we're going to do class location models.model. And what we're going to do is we'll go name models.char field max length equals to, let's say, 120, and we'll leave that not blank or anything like that. And then we'll do ID. Since we're using two sets of data, we'll do Loku ID equaling to models.char field max length, let's say 250, null equals to true, and blank equals to true. Okay, and then for square ID, we'll just call it for ID, and we'll go models, and we'll just do the exact same thing. And then we'll do def Unicode self return self.name. Okay, so this is saving the ID specific to that location. And we will use this again later when we start doing like our own rating system, thumbs up or down or whatever. But it's just basically going to be holding these IDs in one specific spot. So let's go into our settings file and let's add locations to the installed apps. These are indented incorrectly. Okay, so save that, and let's cancel the server. And we'll do a python manage.py, sync the database. All right, run the server again. Then we'll open up our locations views.pys. So let's make sure that we're importing all of our shortcuts there. And then we'll do from models import location. And this first one, we're going to call it single location, and it's going to take in a request and an ID, and we're going to return render to response, and it's going to be, let's do location slash single.html and locals, and then request context instance equals request context request. Okay, so then we want to try and get this location. So location equals to location.objects.get locu ID equals to the ID. And if that location does not exist, so location.does not exist, that is a Django function right there, then we'll do location equals location.objects.get for ID equals to ID, except location equals this location cannot be found. Alright, so now we can set up the singles profile, the singles template page, and we'll do new folder and do locations, and then in there we'll do a new file and do single.html. Okay, let's open that up, and we'll do extends base.html and block content in block. And for now we'll just do location. So now we just need to set up our URLs. So let's go in here and we can just copy this. And let's change this to location. Oops, let's make sure it's lowercase. So location, and then we're going to do an ID. So it's going to pass through an ID, the ID. And of course that's not where the views are now. It's in locations.views.single location, and we can get rid of the URL name. Okay, so save that. So now we're going to update our function a little bit, where we had it appending both of these items separately. We actually want to change it into a list. So we'll say item list equals to, it's going to be a new list. It's pretty simple. We just take that and put it within another list. So this is basically saying here's the item name and here's the ID for it. So we can put this append and we'll do item list. This is just kind of a shortcut to make sure that we have the name and the ID. Make sure that the indentation levels are the same. Save it. Let's go back into Chrome and do Newport Beach. You don't actually have to refresh it because the function's going to be there still. And we got Minute King, and then there's its ID. We can double check this by going back into the console, pasting it in there, sending the request, and Minute King. Cool. So now that we're sending that back, we can change our views into the search, because now it's sending back a list of two things basically. So let's just see what that does. So if we do for loc in locations, loc 0, so in position 0, and loc in position 1. So I'll show you what this does in a second. Lists are funny because they start actually position 1, and how everyone else would think of it is actually position 0 in a list. So if we do another search here, and it's going to go through, we don't have to worry about that too much, but if we go into our terminal, it's going to show us all of the items and the lists. So what we can do, back into our views, so we can say name and locu ID equals to that. So name is the first one, locu ID is the second one, and if we remember, let's just look again. So name's the first one, ID is the second one. So that's kind of how that's coming through. Now we need to actually create a model that is associated to these two. So we will do that. We have to import our location models. So from locations.models import location. Actually, I'm going to do this right up here. Have relative imports right there. So location, now we'll do new location equals to, and then actually location created equals to location dot objects dot get or create, name equals name, ID or loku ID equals loku ID. If created, print created new ID for, and then we'll do just a little string substitution with ID of, and we'll do %s, percent being name, and loku ID. Alright, so now when we do a search, it's going to actually create these location objects for us. So if we do that again, Newport Beach, it's going to go through, and now it should have saved all those. And if we look through here, we can see print created new ID for Carl's Jr., Starbucks, blah blah blah. Cool, so now it's actually creating these IDs and they're saved in there. We can actually get rid of print locations now. Okay, so now if we go back into our search, we can start using one of these IDs to go into /locations and then that actual ID. Oh, looks like we have some invalidation to our single. Okay, so that's going to do there. So it pulls in the actual location and it works. So it says the name, and then if we do location dot loku ID, it's going to say that. All right, so that's kind of cool, and we can do that for any of them. So if we go back and just grab this one and paste it, Coco's Bakery. Okay, cool. So now we are starting to see some more things that we want, which is good. And this is just kind of the basics of getting, like, storing this data without using too much stuff. The next, of course, what we want to do is actually grab the locations based off of what API we're using. So we will do that in the next one. So more data based off of that location, based off of the API that we're using. So if it's Loku, we would go here and then pull some new data down here from their server. All right, so we'll do that in the next one.